afternoon. On behalf of John's wife, Diane, daughter Miranda, son Logan, and his sister Lisa, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming this afternoon. This is a service of celebration, to celebrate a life well lived. And your presence here is a sign not only of your support of John's family, but of the special place that John occupied in your lives. And your presence here is important in his memory. I'd ask you to please open the program that you received on the way in, and please join me in the opening prayer that's printed there. Lord God, hear our prayer as we gather as family and friends of John Mark Williams to celebrate his life and to entrust him to God. We ask you to be present with us now, that you might turn our sadness and grief into a joyful time of remembrance, and to reaffirm our faith in a loving God. Lift our spirits and comfort us this day. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Well, the sun is sure sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. So this old world must still be spinning around, and I still love you. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes. It's alright. I don't know no love song, and I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone. It won't be long before another day we're gonna have a good time, and no one's gonna take that time away. You can stay as long as you like. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes. It's alright. I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore, but I can sing this song, and you can sing this song when I'm gone.
A reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Diane, Logan, and Miranda, it was my privilege to sit with you on Sunday as you told me about your husband and your dad. And as I commented at the time, each time you shared a thought or a memory, rather than tears coming to your eyes, you smiled broadly. And I couldn't help but think that your dad has left a legacy of joy that you can draw upon at any moment. A legacy of many memories that will obviously sustain you in the days and weeks and years ahead. The thought came to mind of a phrase that Robin Williams made famous in the movie Carpe Diem, that your dad was someone who lived life to the fullest. He seized the day, as the expression goes. And when I listened to the memories, the things that he shared with you, whether it was your horseback riding or your flying, your love of diving or your love of sports, and certainly his love of music and reading and cooking. Actually, he was a grill master, I understand. That you have come away at this time in your life with a whole satchel filled with thoughts and memories of a dad who enriched your life. I understand that he was not a religious man, but I have no doubt by hearing your description that he was made in the image and likeness of God. What kind of a God do we have, in fact, who would bless us so richly with someone like your dad or your husband or your brother? Someone who seemed to find the joy in life and seized it, took advantage of every opportunity that came his way to live life to the fullest. And as is written in the obituary, someone who managed to always be supportive as a team player for others. Someone who didn't seek to take the credit, but rather someone who enjoyed pushing other people forward and supporting them. I'm sure that among those of you here present are colleagues of his in the workplace over the years. And I'm sure that you have your own stories and memories of the ways in which John supported you in the workplace, the ways in which he lifted your day and made your day a better day for having encountered him. I am a believer that there is a God who expresses himself not just in books like the Bible or in history lessons, but a God who expresses himself in flesh and blood. Certainly, as a Christian, I'm a believer that God loved us so much that he sent his Son to express his love. But I don't think God stopped there. And so, as I heard the stories of your dad and your husband and your brother, I have no doubt that in John's particular and unique way, he expressed God's love and presence as he lived his life. I remember making the comment as we talked on Sunday that since he seemed to find a way to find the fullness of life and enjoy it as much as he can, the thought of a theologian came to mind who once proposed that death occurs when our body can no longer contain all that we have become. So although he was taken from us early, and did not live the long life that we all long for, I doubt that he lived a life filled with regrets either. I suspect that his life was filled with a bucket list, and he took advantage of every moment he could to squeeze in the next activity that seemed to capture his attention. Now, one of the other qualities that I believe in a God is a God who is hands-on. Not a God who stays remote and far off, but a God who gets involved in our lives and tries to steer us along the way. I was struck by the fact that you told me how your dad was a love of things that were artisan, things that were made by hand, particularly a carpenter shop that seemed to capture his attention. Well, I think in his own way, while he may not have been a carpenter himself, I think he fashioned two beautiful kids. And that's his legacy. That was the way in which he was an artisan, in terms of the way he entered into your lives. The ways in which he supported you in your riding, and supported you, Logan, in your cycling, and your desire for flying, which is now going to influence your career choices. I believe that God is at work in each of our lives while we may not notice it. God is is there without a doubt. God has a way of mixing in our lives through the people who touch our lives, especially the people who seem to lift our lives, who bring a smile to our face, who find the joy and the satisfaction and the gift of life that each of us have received. I know that in a few minutes you're going to hear from members of John's family and a few of his friends who are going to share with you some of the stories of his life. And I hope that as you listen to those stories, you find ways not only to admire John and the way he lived his life, but that you find ways in those stories that you might share the love and the joy and the happiness that seemed to have filled his life. Certainly the best way that we could pay tribute to anyone who has passed is to take an example from their life. Take the best points and put them into practice in our own lives. If John brought a smile to your face, then I would encourage you to bring smiles to those around you. If John taught you how to see the world in a better way, as perhaps he did through his amateur photography, then maybe you should pause more often and take a second look at the world around you. As I heard the brief stories of his life from you, his family, I sat there wishing I could have known him. But in knowing just you for that short period of time, I got a glimpse. And certainly he was a man who has made this world a better place and left you behind as his legacy. God has a way of working in our lives, as I mentioned earlier, that we don't notice. And I believe that when God first conceived of John in his mind and heart, God had a plan in which he might express to us his presence in the world. A God who watched over him from the moment of his birth to the moment when God embraced him again and welcomed him into heaven. There were moments of joy that John brought into the lives of his parents who could not be here today. I'm sure that the day that he was born, there must have been great celebration in the Williams home. A little boy was born. And there must have been great joy when he took his first steps and spoke his first words. And the first time he got on the school bus and went off to school. I have no doubt that there was great joy as I heard some of the stories from Diane when he met you on the airplane, and I know you're going to talk about that. God sends each of us into the world not necessarily as spectators to everybody else's life, but also sends us into the world to be the bearers of the good news. That there is something to be said for mercy, there is something to be said for generosity, there's something to be said for compassion, which is within each of our grasps, if we would but claim it and share it with those around us. As you think about John and his life, remember the best, the ways in which he touched your lives and made this world a better place. the next part of our service, I'd like to invite John's sister Lisa to come up and share some thoughts, and that'll be followed by some other members of his family and friends.
First of all, I regret that my parents were unable to be here today. Their ailing health at the age of my mother, who is 86, and my father, who is 89, prevent them from traveling. And I'd like to start and talk about my brother John. My earliest story of my big brother was related through my parents. Johnny had been an only child for 6 years. Then in 1959, I came into the picture. Upon bringing me home from the hospital, Johnny said, "Can you take it back where you got it?" This theme carried forward through our early childhood. And his nickname for me became Lise the Beast. It seemed he continued to play in my demise. Our early play consisted of cowboys and Indians. My brother John was the cowboy, complete with, he had a gun holster that strapped to his blue jeans and a cowboy hat, which left me to be the Indian. He would tie me to the stake and leave me there. And see if I could get out. We had a backyard swing set from which he would devise ways to tempt me into becoming a sandwich upon which he could jump. He would take an old couch cushion and said, "Lisa, come on, you can be the meat." And the other couch cushion on top, and then he and his friend Steve would jump out of the swing to land on me. We also played with their probably antique toys now, Tinker toys, Lincoln Logs, and an erector set. John loved his little green plastic army men. And we would build models and Lincoln Logs, and he would parachute the army men in and try to destroy the Lincoln Log homes and things like that. He went on to become interested in airplanes. I remember him building airplane models, and we would go with my dad to the grade school that was close to our house. There was a paved playground where he would fly his airplanes. Some of his models crashed upon the solo flight right away, but others we still have today. My parents' home had an old room upstairs where we considered it our time capsule. I have toys that were John's from when we were very little. So in a way, there is still a lot for me to remember him by. Johnny and his friends, with my dad's help, I can remember, built a wooden go-kart that they would push each other around. Being in Indianapolis, we spent time at the Indianapolis 500 motorcycle, watching such drivers as A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti. I believe those were John's, a couple of his favorite drivers. John played Little League. I remember being at baseball games a lot when I was young. As a teen, John went on to become a role model, I think, for a lot of friends there at school. He was very active in his high school. He was involved in ROTC, the Reserve Officers Training Corps at Manual High School in Indianapolis, Indiana. He served on the color guard, in which he carried our nation's flag in numerous parades there downtown in Indianapolis. He earned sharpshooter marksman status while he was in ROTC. He also had a desire to learn to fly and be a pilot like our uncle, Major James Downey, who now resides in California. I believe John's vision was, at that time, was not 2020, which kind of stopped that plan, and to his disappointment, I believe he would have become a pilot had in that day he had the vision to do so. He played high school football with longtime friends Steve Ritter and Mark Ellis. John went on to receive his Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. On graduation, I remember him teaching biology at Indian Creek High School. He then earned his PhD in immunology from Indiana University Medical School. And upon that completion, went on to complete a postdoctorate at Harvard. My parents were so very proud of my brother and to help move him here to Boston. Dad was proud that he was able to help John set up his apartment and move him here back in, I believe it would have been the early 80s. After this milestone, when he received his PhD, I was told that I should address my mail to my brother as doctor. A few years later, in 1984, John traveled home to attend a wedding, and from there he was flying to St. Louis for a seminar. John told a story of an annoying seatmate on the overbooked airplane going from Indianapolis to St. Louis, that's where I believe it was. John pretended